Hi, I'm Dr. David Dobson. Welcome to Conversations. Today, my guest is Jean-Michel Latulippe. He's a marketing professor at University of Moncton in New Brunswick and a PhD candidate in marketing at Laval University in Quebec. His research focuses on chatbots and artificial intelligence. His teaching interest is in digital marketing and consumer behavior. Today, we will discuss his research on the factors impacting chatbot adoption by consumers. It's a great pleasure to have you with me today, Jean-Michel.
It's great being here with you.
To start off, what are chatbots and how do chatbots work?
Well, basically, chatbots are computer programs. They were designed with algorithms, which are able to emulate a conversation with, let's say, someone like you and me, David, a human being, a consumer. They were designed to provide basic information to consumers. For instance, if you ask for help, if you ask for a certain product, or for what sort of characteristics certain products do have. So chatbots, those computer algorithms, will be able to provide you with such information. Really, their goal is really to help you achieve your professional needs as consumers. And they're there to interact with you underneath a business umbrella. What we find in the literature, I guess, is that eventually we would like them to progressively replace human beings. There are, of course, economic reasons for that matter. They are cheaper than employees. And they do provide a lot of information. So there are various types of chatbots. It could be text-based or voice-based. You can also define them as natural language systems, which act either as virtual assistants capable of mimicking human interactions, or being able to chat with humans through text. As I said, they're able to ask questions and receive answers very quickly, and they provide a lot of information. We find them in various industries, really, but in the literature, we can find that they are very useful in the financial sector. We also find them in the hospitality and tourism sector as well, and that's where I'm doing my research in hospitality and tourism. So yeah, that's really where we find most of them.
Cool. What drove your research interest to the use of chatbots in consumer marketing?
Yeah, well, maybe you don't know this, but I started off as a MBA student. I was a MBA student in marketing at Laval from 2015 to 2017. And back then, I was rather more interested in mobile applications, trying to figure out how to geolocalize consumers and how to provide them with appropriate advertisements that would suit their needs. We used to refer them as push or pull interactions. And as I went along, I realized, and I had a few discussions with my PhD, my now PhD supervisor, which was my who was my essay supervisor back then. We were really interested, both of us, in artificial intelligence, and he came along and asked me if I would like to take one of his seminars. And in one of those seminars, there were a few readings about chatbots, and I got hooked. And that's how I decided to switch to reorient my research and focus rather more on chatbots and what they imply and where are we going with this technology and what we really want to achieve.
Based on your research, what factors impact consumer chatbot adoption?
Yeah, there are a lot of factors impacting their adoption by consumers. As you are probably very aware as a marketing researcher yourself, there are utilitarian variables and hedonic variables as well. Some researchers have base their theoretical frame upon the TAM model. As you're probably not very surprised, it's a very a popular model which stems from the management information system field. And we are able to see that variables such as perceived ease of use, perceived usefulness are amongst variables that have an impact on its adoption by consumers. But it's not all. There are also variables such as trust towards the applications, which has a very important impact, which has been researched by quite a few researchers in several empirical studies as well. And also I'd say the main theme about adoptions are anthropomorphic traits of a chatbot. What do we mean by anthropomorphism? It is defined as the attribution of human-like characteristics, behavior, or mental states to non-human entities such as chatbots.
Right.
So they range from a wide traits of physical appearances to various mental states as well.
Okay.
But research points to two types of anthropomorphism. One which is defined as conscious anthropomorphism and mindless anthropomorphism.
Okay.
In the case of conscious anthropomorphism, human traits are associated with chatbot applications. For instance, when consumers come into contact with a mobile chatbot, for instance, in industries such as in financial sector or in hospitality and tourism, like mentioned earlier. So in contrast, mindless anthropomorphism manifests in unconscious perceptions of a system and the resulting expectations on consumers of how that system should behave. Research with regard to anthropomorphism are mixed. Most of them we can find that to summarize it very clearly, the more a chatbot resembles a human being, the more it is likely to be adopted and accepted by consumers.
Right.
On the other hand, when it does resemble a human being way too much, it kind of creeps out the consumers so that they are no longer interested in interacting with the application. So this is where my own personal research is heading. What are the factors from a psychological perspective that could potentially affect the fact that consumers will be more likely to adopt chatbots at a later stage. So as I said, there's also a very important variable with regard to anthropomorphism, which is empathy. Now we have discussed physical traits of chatbots, but there are also those traits that are rather more associated with a psychological state, such as empathy. There's been quite a few research that has been done in that regard. For instance, if those were done in an experimental states, so if you would chat with a chatbot that would give you prompt responses with straight answers and no emoticons, they would be less likely to be adopted and used by consumers. However, if those text-based chatbots use more emoticons and humor, they are more likely to resemble quote-unquote human beings and then rather be accepted by consumers. So I'd say over in short, the majority of studies into anthropomorphic traits of chatbots substantiate these traits as favoring the adoptions of chatbot technology. However, it is not enough for a chatbot to resemble a human being to be accepted and adopted by consumers. So, so yeah, that's where we're heading right now. And yeah.
Nice. What are the barriers to chatbot adaptation today?
Yeah, definitely one of the main variables is lack of trust toward the application by consumers. Research shows that chatbot looks too similar traits to humans help their adoption, but if they, as I said, if they look alike human beings, there's sort of a lack of trust that stems from that. There is also a barrier like technology anxiety for some users, especially among elderly and older users. They are less likely to adopt chatbots since they do not feel comfortable using technology, and it causes them some sort of anxiety. There's also that. There's also a barrier called perceived intrusiveness of advertising messages transmitted via chatbots. So some users really dislike being bombarded with advertising message from a chatbot. So that also prevents them from adopting a chatbot at a later stage in their consumer journey. Perceive a risk of using the applications as well, as also been mentioned in the literature. Yeah.
Okay. Do you have any image or picture of chatbot which we can use it here on our show?
So can you see my screen here?
I can see it's blank right now. Yeah. Oh, perfect.
Yeah. So that's a consumer interacting with through a mobile phone, through text, interacting, shopping actually for a laptop, and asking questions about its price, its characteristics, warranties, etc., and the text-based chatbot is able to respond all queries. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. How can organizations overcome these barriers to chatbot adoption?
Yeah. As of now, what we see is that they are really effective at answering simple queries to consumers, and but they are not at least as of now, the perfect tool at all stages of the consumer journey.
Okay.
For instance, if a consumer has a really bad experience in a hotel and wants to complain about a service failure, for instance, he or she will pop up the applications and make a complaint. And what we've seen so far is that chatbots are less effective at securing and recomforting consumers than human beings are, as if it was a member of staff, for instance. So it's still rather complicated to fully use chatbots throughout the whole journey for the consumer.
Okay.
So what we can do to overcome that? Well, for instance, there are still certain parts of the consumer experience that still have to be handled by members of staff. So we can jointly use chatbots and employees, human beings as employees, to deliver on our promises and deliver on our customer experience. Providing information at first glance. And what organizations can do is they definitely, as for the application itself, is that they can definitely customize the application so that it looks like a personalized human robot. But like I said earlier, we've got to make sure that it does not exactly resemble a human being, because it creeps consumers out. So it's really been shown, it's really been proven. So definitely, if you want to make sure that your consumers are going to get through with you and get along the journey, you got to make sure that they are able to provide prompt responses for, that they do not look too much like human beings. And even in research, we've seen that it doesn't really matter to consumers if sometimes chatbots do some mistakes every now and then. And you know why? Because when chatbots do, they sort of look alike human beings, because human employees make mistakes sometimes when they're interacting with their customers, right?
Yeah.
And it's been shown that consumers do not like when chatbots are too precise.
Are there any confidentiality or the ethics concern when people write their questions on those chatbots, information they provide?
Yeah, it's been raised in the literature that some consumers do not feel comfortable sharing their personal information with an algorithm, basically, because it's been perceived intrusive through their privacy life. And it's definitely a barrier that has to be overcome by organizations in order to make sure their consumers get along. It depends on the chatbots. I guess it depends how they were programmed, and some information is definitely gathered and will be used for the queries. All the information provided by consumers basically help build up the algorithm and feed them, so to speak, so that they are filled with additional information, and we'll be able to respond to other consumers much more quickly, since they got that information already prior end. But usually when it comes to personal information and confidential information, that should not be stored.
Right. Yeah. Makes sense. Okay. Finally, what advice do you have for scholars who wish to advance this research topic?
Yeah, what we see in literature, there are a lot of failed experiments.
Okay.
Through scenarios, for instance,
Yeah.
especially in Chatbots. So
Yeah.
we build up scenarios, but we lack field experiments.
Okay.
So that would be definitely a must to do in research in order to validate
Okay.
and confirm our research,
Okay.
which was conducted, most of them through scenarios.
Right.
Also, there seems to be a lack of qualitative research
Okay.
done with that regard, especially in chatbots and artificial intelligence as a whole.
Right.
So we need more researchers, field experiments, interviews with chatbot consumers to get to the bottom of this.
Okay. Okay. Thank you. Thank you for your time, Jean-Michel. Have a great rest of your day.
Thank you so much, David,